When we attune into the releasing stimuli, inner cosmicity begins to pour into our consciousness, an aspect of cosmicity that nourishes a higher order into our life, a richer, more profound and subtle nourishment. The consciousness and the cosmos, a path to one's own inner cosmos, in assistance of a more profound understanding of the current planetary transition, a stimuli that accompany the pilgrim in his return to his cosmic home. Podcast of Uxim Planetary Service Center. Fate can be defined as a field of energy. A field of energy that operates in the context of the personality. That is, it envelops the personality. When there is fate, the personality is within the field of energy. If the ego and the personality, which serves as a tool for the ego, seek inner life and a closer connection with God at each stage of existence, then the result in subsequent stages and incarnations is a greater flow of energy. This energy has a higher voltage, higher vibrational voltage, and wider scope. Eventually, a moment arrives when there is a relationship established between the sublimated aura of the individual, the energy field we refer to as fate, and the quality of or condition that the psyche and the ego cultivate during their incarnations in the pursuit of inner exploration. So there is no fate in a being who does not seek the inner life. There is no active fate in a being who does not seek to draw closer to God, as was said in other incarnations. Now we speak of inner life, cosmic life, energy, essence, or to the intelligence, whatever terminology we use. That search for inner life, for the divine, for the higher, is the answer in the form of fate that is offered to us today. Everything we genuinely seek in terms of inner closeness is now offered as a field of energy. My inner consciousness perceiving me in search offers me to be enveloped, immersed in a field of energy of higher order, subtle order, that is fate. Fate is not a belief, which is why it is difficult to understand the energy field. Fate is a vibratory pattern, an energy field. When that energy field has the right maturity, it is in the right activity for the stage of my evolution, which generates the possibility, because it is an internally energy field, fluent energy field, fueled, nourished energy field of connecting more fluidly with my inner life. That is why those who have faith can connect more fluidly more elevatedly with the divine, with the unique, with the higher, with their inner consciousness, with their soul, with their inner being, with their inner instructor. So the mind that genuinely seeks inner life without conditioning, without speculation, without ambition, ends up receiving from inner life being immersed in a field of energy. And that field of energy is fate. For everything, what is for, one may ask, for everything, because the being who is immersed in fate, who is immersed in that field of energy, everything he expresses nourished and fed by the inner field of energy. An action outside of fate is not the same as an action undertaken within that field of energy. A thought carried out in a field of energy is a thought of a higher order, which the field of energy itself helps to release and nourish everything that could be a potential recipient. That is why we said that at a certain moment, the magnitude of the individual's aura and the active fate in which he exists interpenetrate and become complementary elements. Then, at a certain stage, an aura of a higher nature has, in an absolutely unavoidable way, an empathic activity with a fate of the same vibratory voltage or volume. At this stage of humanity, we are able to understand that multiplicity, diversity, and no matter what it is, what is necessary to be able to experience something that is treasure, that we could never allow ourselves to practice, which is complementary. If we could leave hypocrisy aside and understand that we are all here to complement each other in order to nurture, sustain, and reach a higher common goal, regardless of the polarity and gender identity we may appear to have, and begin to complement each other together and not criticize the other for what they are, because the other is what they are, because evolutionary they cannot be anything else but that. It is not better evolutionarily, nor higher to be heterosexual. It is not lower to be homosexual. It is not different, and in differences there is neither better nor worse. Different is different. It is not a qualifier in terms of more or less. different is different. It means something that has a condition different from mine. If we could complement each other and somehow karmically compensate this isolation and this bleeding competition that we have imposed on life, because we are continuously competing with others, we do not give ourselves rest, nor do we give rest to others. We completely, primitively, brutally, having brought through the competition that planetary condition that we know today. Complementary is what we are offered to experience. Before, at least to some extent, before this planetary situation, before the apex of planetary purification take place, we have to pave the way for the unification of consciousness through something that also unifies, which is complementary. The symbol that we cannot unify with our inner life, and that we cannot work in harmony, together and complementing each other, and that we give more importance to our differences than to what we have in common, because what we have in common is much more powerful than our differences. We have in common consciousness, essence, light. We have in common having incarnated and being present in matter to reach a higher paradigm that would allow us to advance in our evolutionary process and assist the ascension of this planet, which is stagnated precisely because our attitudes were never up to the requirement. Under the law of karma, adherence does not exempt tests. Otherwise, we would be naive. The most interesting tests under the law of karma occur when there is adherence. For what can energy offer more interesting tests than when a being adheres? A being who does not adhere, who always avoids accompanying the circulatory sense of energy, can pass very primitive and basic tests. It will never pass tests of a higher order. When an aligned being adheres deeply, That is where he is put to the test, which test is of a higher character, where the other in a primitive or non-adherent state has nothing to do because he does not have the tools. Adherence is a very profound tool because it is confirming that consciousness is seeking the circulatory order of that which is presented, the hidden circulatory order, which is precisely adhering to the impulses of liberation that have a circulatory order. Let us never think that the fact of adhering will exempt us from tests. It will exempt us from certain tests, but it will give us, with total certainty and in a perfect way, tests of another condition. When we attune into the releasing stimuli, inner cosmicity begins to pour into our consciousness, an aspect of cosmicity that nourishes a higher order into our life, a richer, more profound and subtle nourishment. So the material forces are still going to be there, but they are not going to interfere unless we interrupt this. It is always what the energy considers, because these forces are not autonomous. They are always within a magnetic so-called belt, within which they can be allowed to do certain things at certain time, contained by the laws. The forces may be a moment where the merging of for action, so that the merging serves as a defining tool at the apex of the transition. The one who is seeking to anticipate what is to come is temporarily lacking in fluidity of intelligence, because nobody can anticipate what is to come. Why? Because you can consult all the fortune tellers, all the tarot readers. Go and look for the most famous astrologists. They can all tell you the same thing, and then 10 minutes later you have disincarnated. And they hadn't told you that you were going to disincarnate. What the new instruction urges us to keep in mind is the synthesis of truth, to experience life, which is the internal present, which defines all these situations. A being that seeks to anticipate the future while living in the past is continuously undermining the internal present. The result in a state of absolute unreality as they wait to see what will happen and how they will adapt. They are unaware that what they are preparing for might not just be a wave, but a tsunami. An overwhelming force that can be 25 meters tall. While a tsunami consists of multiple waves, some can be significantly larger than anything they were expecting, leaving them unprepared for the true scale of what is to come. The individual must learn to live in the internal present. By doing so, individuals can access a synthesis of understanding that those filled with anxiety cannot achieve. This is because projecting anxiety in a certain way often leads to falling into a personal doctrine. It's common for individuals with the personal doctrine to experience anxiety process, anxiety attacks, and depression. This occurs because their compulsive and anxious desire to foresee the future reveals a lack of ability to do so. Deep down, a part of their consciousness reminds them, you can't do that. There is no way you can do that. It is impossible. We have no tools or means to accomplish it. Today, more than ever, we have to understand that the only way to prepare ourselves to be able to transmute the past, to transcend the past, and to be able to take on the future is the internal present. In a simple movement in search of inner synchronicity, we fix both. But otherwise we jump forward and then backwards, and then forward and backwards. And consciousness is devitalized because it is using energy for something it is not good for something it was not offered for. The energy endowment we have today is to exercise that alignment and that synchronicity with the inner life. That is to say, it is equivalent to doing here on the outer side of life and matter what is stable, absolutely stable and precise on the inner life. For the soul and the inner consciousness of the being live in internal present, live in a perfect relationship of cosmic synchronicity. When we say to the ego and the personality that they have to live in internal present, it is approaching, under the laws, to govern the ego and the personality, meaning the law of karma and the other laws, something that outer being lives as an aspect of cosmic law. There is an understanding that what is below mirrors what is above. This is not merely a fact, but rather an ongoing experience in the internal present. As above, below must be. Must means we owe it. We still owe it because it is not.